Hello learners, I welcome you all to this course on International Investment Law and the Environment. As the title denotes, you could find two separate distinct fields. One is we're talking about International Investment Law, which is a separate academic discipline, and then we are also talking about the environment. So the focus of this course is to integrate environmental principles within the field of international investment law. So that's going to be the focus. So it becomes very pertinent for me to give an introduction as to what do we mean by international investment law, because this is a phrase that is used very commonly only in the past few decades. So I've designed my first lecture to give an introduction to what we will call as international investment law, and then proceed further into the main substance of what is going to be covered within the course. Given the fact that the title contains international investment law, it is actually pertinent for me to first clarify the scope of this phrase before we go on to discuss the various ways in which environmental principles could be reconciled within the field of international investment law. There is no multilateral organization with regard to foreign direct investment, and there is no multilateral agreement that contains substantive rules governing the movement of capital from one country to other country. But what we have is something that exists in the bilaterally, in bilateral in nature. There are treaties that are signed between countries and contains provision for regulating movement of capital from one country to the other country. The very first bilateral investment treaty, or BIT, that we would refer it to us, was signed between Germany and our neighbor Pakistan in the year 1959. Ever since that very first BIT was signed, we do see a rise in the number of treaties being signed. I mean, United States and India started joining this practice much later in time. It was first the European countries that started signing bilateral investment treaties. United States joined in 1980s and India joined in 1990s. Post LPG policies were adopted by India. Right, but we do see a constant rise in number of bilateral investment treaties being signed. As of April 2025, we see 2,843 bilateral investment treaties have been signed till now, and out of which 2,221 bilateral investment treaties are in force, which is a huge number. I mean, given the fact that the very first treaty was signed in 1959, within a short span of time, we do see an exponential rise in the number of treaties being signed bilaterally by countries for regulating movement of capital across borders. It's not just the bilateral investment treaties, there are also other treaties with investment provision that also regulate foreign direct investment. For instance, look at NAFTA, CPTPP. So all of these treaties contain one chapter or some provisions with regard to investment and how to regulate foreign direct investment. And you may also find sector specific treaties also, like Energy Charter Treaty, containing provisions on regulating foreign investment as well. So these treaties which contain provisions on investment is something that is referred to as treaty with investment provisions, or in short TIPs. We will also talk about TIP in this course. So there are bilateral investment treaties, then you also have treaty with investment provisions that also establish a normative framework with regard to movement of capital across borders. So, is there any multilateral instrument? I started my discussion by saying that there is no multilateral organization, there is no multilateral treaty, but there is one multilateral agreement which was concluded under the auspices of World Bank, that was done only to settle the investment disputes amicably. It was concluded in the context of depoliticization of investment disputes. So that multilateral framework, which is ICSID Convention, or the full name of the convention is Convention for the Settlement of Investment Disputes between Nations and Nationals of other states, right? In short, it is also called as Washington Convention as well. So this multilateral agreement only talks about the procedural framework for resolving investment disputes. Other than that, even in the context of World Trade Organization, we do have trade related investment measures agreement, that is also a multilateral agreement. So other than that, these two agreements, we do not have any multilateral agreement that talks about market access, which is a core substance of bilateral investment treaty. In that context, we don't have any multilateral agreement. There have been attempts, especially by OECD, but it did not yield in a, it was not successful in yielding a multilateral agreement on investment. So given the fragmentary nature of the rules of foreign investment, we will have to acknowledge that the fragmentary nature as well. But when we say that international investment law, or this is a phrase that we'll be using throughout the course. So what do we mean by that? You already know there is fragmentary origin to the rules of foreign investment, because there's multitude of TIPs and BITs. So when we use the phrase international investment law, we refer to a unified concept that comes out of these many BITs and many TIPs that were concluded. And international investment law is something, a concept that we are going to discuss, that arises from the multitude of these BITs and TIPs. So that is something that we have to properly acknowledge, the fragmentary nature of international investment law. If we look at Dolzer and Truer, they also say that international investment law, or the rules of international rules of foreign investment, has become a separate academic discipline, just like any other distinct fields like law of the war, law of the sea. So like that, international investment law has also become a separate distinct field. And we also look at the fragmentary nature. We should be very mindful of the fact that the normative framework governing foreign investment, foreign direct investment, comes from many different BITs and TIPs. So due caution should be exercised while using the term international investment law. How can we exercise this due caution? We have to properly acknowledge that the treaty provisions are different in BITs and TIPs, as well as the interpretation of these treaties provisions are also different by arbitral tribunals. So that also has to be acknowledged, even though when we refer to international investment law as a unified concept, we have to we have to properly acknowledge the fragmentary nature of rules of foreign investment. If we look at the report, there is an International Law Commission's report with respect to fragmentation of international law into specified rules, specialized rules, then legal institutions, then spheres of legal practice like environment law, then trade law, then investment law. Please note that the ILC report itself has acknowledged investment law to be an autonomous field of international law. So international investment law is something that is being recognized. We cannot straight away point out to be this is the starting point of international investment law. No, the origin of international investment law comes from the practice of countries in signing many bilateral investment treaties and treaties with investment provisions. So we are talking about the unified concept that is established by the multitude of BITs and TIPs. So let me also give you this caution or a disclaimer here. We are not bothered about examining this unified concept of international investment law or conceptualizing this unity of international investment law from a theoretical perspective, because that is not the focus of this course. The focus of this course is to talk about integrating environmental principles within the field of international investment law. So let us not go into theorizing international investment law or how does the unity of international investment law results in a unified concept of international investment law. So I would just point to the existence or point to the fact that even ILC, International Law Commission, has acknowledged that international investment law is an autonomous field of investment law. Okay, so what is it when we say international investment law? What is it that we talk about? So the legal protections for foreign investment across many BITs and TIPs are similar. So the advocates of the concept of unified concept of international investment law always point to the fact that the provisions that are contained in many BITs and TIPs share similar features with regard to the provisions that are granted or that are given for the protection of foreign investment and investor, as well as the provision that deals with the dispute settlement mechanism of investment disputes. For instance, look at the provision with regard to expropriation. You will find similar provision in many BITs. So the protection asserting fair and equitable treatment, full protection and security, and anti-discriminatory provisions like national treatment (MFN) are found in many of the treaties. So that is where the unified concept of international investment law comes into picture. Moreover, the dispute settlement mechanism established by this BITs and TIPs are very unique in the context of international law. In fact, this is exceptional to other fields of international law because an investor can directly bring a claim against the host state. So that is why the dispute settlement mechanism in international investment law is called as investor state dispute settlement, ISDS. ISDS is also another phrase you should know as students of this course. When we talk about ISDS, we mean investor state dispute settlement, which is a very unique feature of international investment law, because even in the context of trade law, if you look at international trade law, if you look at the World Trade Organization, that again provides for a dispute settlement mechanism between two countries. So that also talks about state to state dispute settlement mechanism. ICJ also decides cases between states, but it is only in international investment law an investor, a private corporation, or sometimes it could also be a private individual, who can bring a case against the government in whose territory the investor has made the investment, that is the host state, right? So this is a very unique feature of international investment law. So this is the context, this is how I want to set the context for international investment law, and it is in this context we will be using this phrase throughout the entire course. And when we talk about the protections given to investor, or while interpreting the provisions in BIT, how to integrate environmental principle. So we will very often use the phrase international investment law, this is possible, that is possible. So when we say international investment law, we refer to the unified concept of international investment law established by a multitude of BITs and TIPs. So I hope this is a good introduction to start the course with, or to begin the course with. So we will explore other concepts in the subsequent lectures. Thank you.